You're welcome back to the Gavel. Now, we're still looking at the major activities that took place in the National Assembly during the year. We're looking at the major motions, bills, public hearings, investigations that caused quite a stir in the country. Case in point, the drama that followed the allegations made by the former CBN Governor Sanusi Lamido that the NNPC failed to remit $49.8 billion oil revenue. You will recall that the Senate mandated its Committee on Finance to investigate the allegations made by the former CBN governor. So let's go back and look at the public hearings and the report that emerged from the investigations. For the past 3 decades, crude oil has been a major source of revenue and foreign exchange for the Nigerian economy. Oil, being the mainstay of the Nigerian economy, plays a vital role in shaping the country's economic policies. One need look no further than the country's budget, which is partly hinged on crude oil production and oil benchmark price. But with the availability of a huge source of revenue for the country comes a bigger challenge of accountability and management of crude oil revenue. One of the most highly monitored investigations recently in the National Assembly was a probe of the alleged non-remittance of $49.8 billion from oil revenue. The former CBN governor, Sanusi Lamido, had accused the NNPC of failing to remit funds from oil revenue to the Federation account. Mr. Lamido wrote to President Goodluck Jonathan saying the NNPC failed to remit the sum of $49.8 billion from oil revenue to the Federation account. This allegation caught the eye of the Senate. The NNPC swung into action, organizing a couple of news conferences to address the accusation by the CBN governor.
The statement credited to the CBN governor that NNPC has failed to remit the sum of $49.8 billion, representing 76% of total national oil receipts, is born out of a surprisingly lack of understanding of how revenues from crude oil sales are remitted into the Federation account.
But fast forward a few days later, at a Senate public hearing to investigate the allegation, the then CBN governor made a U-turn and said so far only $12 billion was left unremitted. But the Minister of Finance, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, at that meeting countered Mr. Sanusi.
There is a general consensus among us on this table that there is a shortfall, even though the amount is being disputed. For us in the Central Bank, the shortfall in the period is about $12 billion.
No, I just wanted to add that we found about 10.8 billion.
In the confusion of how much exactly was left to be unremitted, the Senate Committee on Finance asked the CBN, the NNPC, Ministries of Finance and Petroleum to work together and present a true picture of the amount left to be reconciled. At the continuation of the hearing, Mr. Sanusi Lamido came out with a fresh figure which he said was left to be remitted by the NNPC.
So let us first of all make it clear that out of $67 billion NNPC shipped, $47 billion has been repatriated to the central bank. Now what we're talking about is the balance of the $20 billion and what explanations have been given.
He also raised some other issues questioning the operations of the NNPC. But the chairman of the committee called for caution.
The NNPC has explained that 80% of the money they have not repatriated came on kerosene and fuel subsidy. I have submitted to this committee written evidence of a presidential directive eliminating subsidy since 2009, and NNPC needs to provide its authority for buying kerosene at 150 naira from the Federation account and selling at 40 naira, and inflicting that loss on the Federation.
But I would like to also observe that I know for sure every year in the revenue framework, the National Assembly appropriates money for subsidy. So whether NNPC deducted it or did not deduct it on time, that's not an indication that there is no money appropriated for subsidy on PMS.
The then NNPC Group Managing Director swiftly reacted to the allegation by Mr. Sanusi Lamido.
CBN is a banking outfit, so I really understand why they will not understand some petroleum engineering issues, and they are not also an auditing outfit. Now, what they're trying to do is to audit. And I had some statements made here that they do not have this document, they don't have that document. They are not the auditors. We have certified bodies and arms of agencies that are charged with the responsibility of auditing.
Several public hearings were held subsequently to investigate the claim by Mr. Sanusi Lamido. At one of the sessions, the NNPC and the Petroleum Minister, Diezani Alison Madueke, gave an analysis of how the $10.8 billion was gulped by subsidy on petroleum products, crude oil and products losses.
They will also go into the issue, of course, alluded to by the CBN governor regarding the NNPC's liftings attributable to NPDC, which we all know is its 100% owned subsidiary, and also the third-party finance liftings, which are related debts incurred for our joint venture projects.
I have to make this clarification because the impression is that NNPC is sitting on money. And I also want to make Nigerians understand that this money we're talking about is not, well, I've had comments about NNPC deducting a source, NNPC, these are unrealizable flows.
The former CBN governor then provided a summary of funds received by the Apex Bank and the irregularities identified.
So as far as the central bank is concerned, the most important point to establish is that there's a difference of $20 billion between what NNPC shipped and what it repatriated.
The finance minister said the NNPC had produced documents to support its claim of a shortfall of $10.8 billion. But she said the Ministry of Finance lacked the capacity and expertise to guarantee the authenticity of the documents. The Senate Committee on Finance then directed the Ministry of Finance to engage independent forensic auditors to validate the documents presented by the NNPC over the alleged $10.8 billion unremitted funds.
The issue of $20 billion, the additional charges made by the CBN, let me repeat that if you look at the matter carefully, the committee feels that this ranges around legal issues and that it therefore requires legal expertise to answer the question of who owns those monies, NNPC or the Federation account.
We request you, as Minister of Finance, to so independently do a forensic audit of what PPRA has certified and submit your the report of such independent body to the committee.
After months of meetings, the Senate Committee on Finance ended the probe and came out with a report. The chairman of the Senate Committee on Finance, Ahmed Makrafi, gave details of the investigation at plenary on July 7, 2014. Senator McCarthy said there was never any unremitted $49.8 billion and the committee did not see how the then CBN governor arrived at the figure of $49.8 billion in the first place.
The committee could not see how the figure of $49.8 billion was arrived at by the CBN governor in the first instance.
The committee observed that there is lack of proper and adequate coordination between the key government agencies such as the CBN, NNPC, Ministries of Finance and Petroleum, FIRS and DPR.
That there was poor record keeping and nonchalant work attitude by the NNPC by not rendering returns of subsidy claims on monthly basis from January 2012 to date, which contributed largely to the creation of the problem in hand.
Lawmakers then debated the report.
The governor of the central bank, as he then was, made a lot of very wild allegations, and when he now faced the committee, the figures kept flying from 20 billion, 12 billion, or 10 point something billion, or anything in between.
In more organized systems, somebody will have taken a poison pill. But we are instead talking about deliberately orchestrated failures, and nobody is accepting blame.
The committee in the report recommended that the subsidy regime be totally abolished, but this recommendation was shut down by lawmakers.
I think any call for subsidy removal
we must not entertain it in this chamber. My reason is that, one, for us to talk of subsidy removal, the necessary infrastructure necessary for the removal to be possible must be put in place.
The committee also recommended that the NNPC refund and remit $262 million, being expenses it could not satisfactorily defend in respect of holding strategic stock reserve, pipeline maintenance and management costs, as well as capital expenditure. The frequent claims of fraudulent activities by the NNPC is indeed troubling to many Nigerians. Many critics have said that there are unanswered questions in the crude oil sector, where only the NNPC understands how things operate, while ceaseless accusations continue to trail the corporation's operations. Now, this is where we draw the curtains for this week's edition of The Gavel. But don't forget, we'll still like to hear from you to find out what were the major motions, bills, public hearings, activities that occurred in the National Assembly during the year that you would want featured or revisited on The Gavel. So please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you very much for staying with us, and see you again next week.